Audacity. It's a beautiful word, isn't it? It implies a certain fearlessness, a bold willingness to step over the line. But let's be real for a second, people. In the modern era, audacity is almost exclusively a male trait. It is the unearned confidence of a man who thinks his fantasy football takes are profound. It is the spiritual foundation of every guy who has ever said, well, actually, to play devil's advocate. Welcome back to The Audacity of Him. I'm your host, Roxy, and today we are talking about a level of male audacity so breathtaking, so astronomically out of pocket, that NASA is currently studying it as a new form of dark matter. Today's story is personal. It's about my life. It's about the grueling, soul-crushing, vomit-scented trenches of stand-up comedy. It's about a little black book, and it is about a mediocre, beanie-wearing, podcast-hosting human yeast infection named Trevor. Let me set the scene. Stand-up comedy is not glamorous. For every glamorous Netflix special you see, there are 10,000 hours of performing to 6 drunk people in the basement of a bowling alley on a Tuesday. You survive on stale pretzels, spite, and the delusional hope that one day you'll write the perfect joke. And where do those perfect jokes live? In the notebook. Every comic has one. It's our Bible. It's our Horcrux. Mine was a thick, black leather moleskin. It had 3 years of my life in it. Every observation, every humiliating dating story, every meticulously crafted punchline that I had bled for. It was the blueprint for my debut hour. I protected this book like it was a newborn baby. Actually, better than a newborn baby, because a baby can't get you a late-night set on Jimmy Kimmel. Enter Trevor. Trevor was the kind of comic who thought being loud was the same thing as being funny. His entire act consisted of pacing the stage aggressively, complaining that women don't like nice guys, and doing crowd work that amounted to pointing at a couple and going, "So, who wears the pants? Probably her, am I right?" Fucking groundbreaking, Trevor. Give this man a Mark Twain prize. But worse than his aggressively mediocre crowd work was his reputation. In the comedy scene, Trevor was known as a bottom-feeding joke thief. He was the guy you stopped talking around the second he walked into the green room. He'd accidentally overhear a premise at the bar and suddenly be workshopping it on stage 3 days later, shrugging it off to everyone as parallel thinking. We all knew he was a vulture. We just never had the concrete proof to nail him to the wall. It was a bleak Friday night at a club called the Giggling Pig in Akron, Ohio, a venue that smelled distinctly of bleach and crushed dreams. I had just absolutely murdered an hour-long headline set. I was vibrating with adrenaline. I threw my jacket on, grabbed my bag, and rushed out to catch a red-eye flight back to New York. It wasn't until I was at 30,000 feet, reaching into my bag to jot down a premise about the TSA, that my stomach completely dropped out of my ass. My notebook was gone. I panicked. I called the club manager at 3 a.m. I had them tear the green room apart. They found an old slice of pepperoni pizza, 3 guitar picks, and a condom from 2014, but no black leather journal. I was devastated. 3 years of material, the A stuff, the B stuff, the deep, dark, weird stuff, vanished. I spent the next 6 months trying to reconstruct it from memory, but it's like trying to repaint the Mona Lisa with a box of broken crayons. It just wasn't the same. I mourned it. I grieved. And eventually, I moved on. I started writing new material. Until a year later. I was scrolling through TikTok while on the toilet, as God intended, when I saw a face that made my blood pressure spike. It was Trevor. He was performing at the Comedy Store in LA, a huge step up from Akron. The caption read, "This guy is hilarious, such a unique perspective." I watched the clip. He was doing a bit, a very specific bit, a bit about the absolute, agonizing, structural nightmare of trying to find a sports bra that doesn't make you look like you have a uniboob, but also prevents your chest from giving you a black eye on the treadmill. My bit. I sat there paralyzed. I listened as this flat-chested, biological male delivered my highly specific, estrogen-fueled nightmare word for fucking word. The only thing he changed was the setup. Instead of saying, "I was at Lululemon," he said, "My crazy ex-girlfriend was at Lululemon." He didn't just steal the premise, he stole the cadence, he stole the act-outs, he stole the punchline. I felt a rage so pure and hot it could have melted steel. I went to his page. I scrolled down. There it was, my bit about getting a UTI in a Toyota Corolla. My bit about my grandmother's funeral where the priest forgot her name. My 5-minute closer about the psychological warfare of a Target run. He had my book. Trevor, this talentless, unseasoned chicken breast of a man, had found my notebook in Akron, Ohio, and instead of giving it to the manager, he pocketed it. And he was using it to build his entire fucking career. He was getting famous, off my trauma, off my neuroses. I knew right then and there, I wasn't just going to call him out. Calling a comedian out on Twitter is a Tuesday. It's temporary. The internet's attention span is shorter than Trevor's stamina in the bedroom. I didn't want an apology. I wanted complete, total, scorched earth annihilation. But before we get to the absolute bloodbath, the legal assassination, and the moment Trevor's soul left his body on live television, let's take a quick second for the algorithm, friends. If you have ever had a man try to take credit for your idea in a corporate meeting, or if you just generally enjoy watching mediocre men get financially and socially ruinous comeuppance, smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so you never miss a dose of Audacity. Leave a comment down below telling me the most audacious thing a man has ever tried to pull on you. My favorite comment wins a branded Audacity of Him t-shirt and a voodoo doll with no genitalia. All right, back to the murder. So here was the problem. Plagiarism in comedy is notoriously hard to prove. Unless you have the joke on film, time-stamped, before the other person tells it, it's just he said, she said. And sure, I had workshopped these jokes at open mics, but nobody records open mics. It's too depressing. Trevor knew this. He was banking on the fact that I couldn't prove it. He started getting cocky. He went on massive podcasts. He was being praised as a new voice. Critics were saying, Trevor has an uncanny, almost feminine emotional intelligence in his observational humor. No shit, Sherlock. It's because the words coming out of his mouth were written by a woman who was bleeding out of her uterus while drinking boxed wine. I needed proof. Hard, undeniable, legally binding proof. And that is when I remembered my own paranoia. You see, I didn't just write in any black leather notebook. I am a tech-savvy millennial with deep-seated trust issues. A year before the Akron incident, my sister, who, by the way, is a ruthless intellectual property lawyer in Manhattan, bought me a gift. It was a smart pen, a highly expensive Bluetooth-enabled smart pen. Every single stroke, every word, every doodle, every crossed-out line I wrote in that physical notebook was simultaneously digitized, encrypted, and backed up to a secure cloud server, complete with a verified timestamp down to the goddamn millisecond. Trevor didn't just steal a notebook, he stole a highly surveilled GPS tracker of my intellectual property. I had the receipts. Every single joke he was telling, I had the digital proof that I wrote it, sometimes years before he ever uttered a syllable of it. But I didn't send a cease and desist. Not yet. Why kill the pig when it's still getting fat? I waited. I watched him announce a nationwide theater tour. I watched him sign a massive contract for a 1-hour special with a major streaming network. Let's call them Hulu Flicks. I let him build his entire house of cards on the foundation of my stolen words. I waited until the stakes were as high as they could possibly be. Then I laid the trap. There was one particular routine in the back of my stolen journal. It was a brand new 10-minute closer, the crown jewel. It was an intricate, highly personal story about my eccentric, chain-smoking Aunt Brenda, a stolen jet ski, and a misunderstanding with the Florida Highway Patrol. It was a masterpiece of storytelling. It was also completely fabricated. I wrote it as a writing exercise, but more importantly, knowing that joke thieves like Trevor existed in our ranks, I had specifically formatted the jokes so that if you read the punchlines in a certain cadence, it worked like an acrostic poem. It was my own personal copyright trap. I knew Trevor wasn't a writer. He was a parrot. He didn't adapt the material. He just memorized it and spit it back out. The night of his massive hometown theater show in Los Angeles, the show that was being taped for his multi-million-dollar special, I bought a front row ticket. The theater was packed. The cameras were rolling on cranes. The crowd was buzzing. Trevor bounded out onto the stage to a standing ovation. He looked so smug, so secure. He launched into his set. He did my bit about the sports bra. The crowd roared. He did my bit about the Toyota Corolla. Uproarious laughter. I just sat there in the front row, sipping a $14 gin and tonic, smiling. Then he got to the closer, the Aunt Brenda story, the big finale. He built the tension perfectly. He got to the climax of the story. The cameras were zooming in, and as he delivered the final, breathless punchline, I stood up. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just stood up, right in the center of the front row, directly in his sightline. Trevor looked down. He froze. You could literally see the Windows 95 error screen pop up behind his eyes. He recognized me. He knew exactly who I was. The silence in the theater was deafening. The crowd thought it was part of the act. They were waiting. I pulled out my phone. I had already coordinated with the venue's AV guy, a lovely man named Gary, who Trevor had screamed at earlier that afternoon over a microphone stand. Gary hated Trevor. Gary and I were best friends now. I tapped one button on my phone. Suddenly, the massive LED screens behind Trevor on the stage didn't show his logo anymore. Behind him, projected in 4K resolution, was my digitized notebook, the exact page of the Aunt Brenda joke. And right next to it, a glowing, indisputable digital timestamp from 3 years ago. But I didn't stop there. The image on the screen shifted. It showed a video compilation I had made. It was split screen. On the left, Trevor on various podcasts and stages over the last year telling my jokes. On the right, me, in dingy comedy clubs, telling the exact same jokes years prior, with timestamps permanently burned into the footage. The crowd gasped. The energy in the room went from comedy special to live execution in 0.5 seconds. Trevor stammered. He tried to laugh it off. Wow, technical difficulties, folks, he squeaked. His voice cracked like a pubescent choir boy. I looked him dead in the eye, and without a microphone, projecting from my diaphragm like the theater professional I am, I said, "Those are my jokes, you unoriginal hack. Read the first letter of every sentence in the Aunt Brenda bit." Trevor, panicking, looked back at the screen where the Aunt Brenda bit was still projected. It spelled out, "Trevor is a thief." He had just recorded his $1 million streaming special using a bit that literally spelled out his own crime. He dropped the microphone. It made a horrific feedback screech that echoed through the theater. He practically sprinted off the stage. The crowd was booing. The producers were scrambling. It was the most beautiful disaster I have ever witnessed. Now, let's talk about the legal aftermath, because the court of public opinion is fun, but the actual court of law is where the real damage is done. Remember my sister, the IP lawyer? She didn't just send a cease and desist. She dropped a nuclear bomb of litigation on Trevor and his management. We sued for copyright infringement, theft of intellectual property, and unjust enrichment. Because we had the digital smart pen timestamps, the case was airtight. It never even went to trial. Trevor's lawyers took one look at the evidence and basically told him to bend over. We got an injunction that permanently blocked the release of his special. We forced his management to surrender 100% of the royalties and booking fees he had earned over the past 2 years. Every dime he made using my material. We legally drained him dry. But the best part? The absolute cherry on top of this beautiful petty sundae? It was the comedy community. Comedians are vultures, right? We love tragedy, especially when it happens to someone we all secretly hated anyway. Trevor became the biggest pariah in the industry. His name became a verb. If a comic went up and totally bombed, or got caught stealing a tweet, the other comics in the back would go, "Woof, he really pulled a Trevor tonight." He lost his podcast. He lost his agent. He lost his verified checkmark. Where is Trevor now? From what I hear, he's currently featuring for a very racist ventriloquist act at a casino off the highway in Branson, Missouri. He performs at 2 p.m. on Tuesdays to an audience of people who are mostly just waiting for the all-you-can-eat crab leg buffet to open. And as for me, well, losing that notebook was the best thing that ever happened to me. Rewriting all that material made it sharper. The anger gave it teeth. The revenge gave me a viral moment that caught the eye of some very important people. Next month, I'm shooting my own hour-long special. And yes, it will feature the sports bra joke, the Toyota Corolla joke, and a very, very long, legally cleared segment about a guy named Trevor who fucked around and found out. The audacity of him to think he could steal a woman's voice and get away with it. The absolute towering audacity. Thanks for tuning in, you beautiful, audacious people. Keep your notebooks locked up, keep your smart pens charged, and never, ever let a mediocre man take credit for your genius. I'll see you in the next audacious story.